All right, we're going to start this project by making a series of slightly wavy parallel lines to make our ribbons. So I'm going to start here and just kind of wave myself off to the edge. Make sure you start at an edge and you go off and finish at an edge. You don't want to leave anything hanging. All right, so for my next one, and again, I'm drawing really darkly so that you can see, but I want you to draw lightly so that you can erase and get rid of your pencil marks. So now I'm gonna follow that line off the side. Okay, it's okay if it gets a little thicker or thinner in certain areas. It kind of makes it look like it's getting closer and further away. Okay, so then for our next one, we need to, what we'll do is we'll just go right over it. Like this doesn't even exist. So this time I'm gonna start over here and I'm gonna go off. Let's see, where am I gonna go? Maybe like this. Okay. Then I'm gonna come over here and just kind of follow it. It gets thinner and then it gets thicker and then it kind of falls off over here. Okay, so right here, what we need to do where they overlap is figure out which one's going over and which one's going under. And it really doesn't matter which way it goes, you decide. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say this one's going over, which means I need to erase these two lines. That and that. So already we've got two ribbons, one going over the other. All right, so now I need another one. Let's say I'm gonna start here, and this time I'm gonna go up and back and off this way, okay? And again, I'm gonna follow that. I'm gonna get kind of skinny and then probably a little bit thicker and go off the page like that. Now, since this one went over here, this time I want it to go underneath. So this one that I just drew, these two lines are going to go over, which means I need to erase these two lines. Okay, and you just kind of keep doing this until we fill up all of our space. Let's see, I'm going to need something in this area. So what you need to be careful of is, you know, right here where they overlap, I really don't want to have another one going over that same area because it just gets really confusing. So I'm going to have one start over here, kind of curve around like that. Okay, so, okay, here, this one's going over, so now I want it to go under right there. So I'm going to erase these two lines. And since this is going over here, then I want it to go under this one. So I'm going to erase these two lines. Okay, so let's see, it goes over, under, over. Okay. And then I kind of need something coming through here. So let's see. How about one that goes kind of like this? Okay, let me look at this one. We go under, over, under. So here we'll go over. You want to just make sure you keep alternating them. Okay. So now let me focus on the one I just drew. So here it goes under. So here I want it to go over. Over, so here under. So I erase these two. Okay, and then really I just kind of need something to fill out over here. I think I have enough going on. So I'll start and just kind of have one little ribbon just kind of filling out this weird little empty space over here. And maybe I can fit one more. I kind of feel like I need something over here. So let's see. I guess I'll have it go over. Yeah, because this one here, it goes over, so I want it to go under the one I just did. So I want the one I just did to go over. Okay. One more, just to kind of help fill out this space. Kind of like that. And I'm being kind of careful here. You know, this intersection I think is going to be okay. It's kind of close. Kind of like that. Okay, that's definitely plenty. Let me just figure out this one ribbon, and then I think we're going to be good to go. So this one went over. Here it needs to go under. So let me let this one go over. Okay, so here, the one I just drew goes over, needs to go under this one. So go over, under, over. Over, under. So I need to erase these two. Okay. You can still kind of see my pencil, so I'm gonna outline it in Sharpie so it's really clear. I have mine in Sharpie. Please don't do yours in Sharpie. Do yours lightly in pencil so that you don't see it in the end, but I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to paint the background first, because when you're painting something like this, you do want to do the background first, and you kind of work in layers. So I'll fill in the background, and what is so important is that I make sure all this background is covered. It is okay to get over the line a little bit. You don't have to be totally that neat with this background. It's just mainly important to get rid of all of your white space. So if you go over the line, that's okay, because after the background is done and dry, we're going to paint the ribbon, and you can paint over anything that you have gotten on your ribbon. So when we do the ribbon, we'll be really careful, but with the background, you can actually be just a little messy. So with mine, and with yours actually, be thinking about your color combinations. You don't want the background and the ribbon to be too much the same, because they'll blend together. You want the ribbons to really pop out. So think of something or a color or a value that's going to contrast with your ribbon. I'm gonna do like a warm background and a cool ribbon. Because I want to do blue. I like the color blue, so I'm going to do my ribbons blue, and since blue is a cool color, I'll do my warm background. Whatever combination you want to do is fine, as long as you get contrast so they don't blend together. All right, so with your background, we're going to be a little messier this time, and we're going to be focusing on creating some kind of texture with your paint. Instead of trying to get it a flat solid color, you're going to want to see some different variations in color and maybe some brush strokes, so we're not really smoothing everything out. So since I decided I wanted to do my background in warm colors, I went ahead and I got some red and some yellow. And what I'm going to do is just start painting, and I'm going to mix some of the color on here. If you've decided you want your background, let's say just a green, that's fine. You could keep it green, but maybe in certain places you add maybe a little bit of white, or you could add, really, anything to it, just a little bit, just to cut. You could, you know, go and tone it down with a complement if you wanted. You could add an analogous color to it just to alter it a little bit so it's not just the same everywhere. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with my red, and like I said, this is gonna be kind of messy. And I'm just gonna go ahead and paint. I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow in there, and I'm just covering all of that space. Notice I am getting on my ribbon just a little bit, but that's okay because I'm going to paint over that later. I just want some different kind of brush strokes, some texture. As you do this, keep in mind your goal is to cover all of that white space in the background. Now, I'm just gonna leave that like that because I kind of like that. You can see different strokes of colors in there. And it's got a lot of texture. I've covered all of that. Again, I've got it on the ribbon, but that's fine. And I'm gonna do this all over my background. Okay, I've finished my background. And what I decided to do with mine is do a lot of yellows in my reds to create some yellow and orange, and then I went more red, and then back over here I added just the tiniest bit of black to make my red darker. So we're looking for subtle changes and making sure that you're filling up that white background. Once you finish your background, you need to set it aside and let it dry. You don't want to start painting your ribbon yet, not until this paint is dry, because we don't want them to mix together. So set it aside, and then once it's dry, you could use a hair dryer if you want to dry it quickly. If not, just set it aside and you can work on it later. But go ahead and clean your plate off, because we're going to start with a fresh color when we go to paint the ribbon. All right, now that mine's dry, what we're going to do now is focus on one ribbon segment at a time. And I'm just talking about one shape. So like either this or this one or this little section. You want to just do one at a time, ignore them all except for one little segment at a time. And what you're going to do is you're going to do a little blending, and you're going to start dark and then go light and then dark in every little segment. So here you'll be dark, light, dark. Here will be dark, light, dark on each one. So at this point, you really want to take your time on this. Really focus on staying inside the line and blending. So let me do one. All right, I'm going to focus on this one right here. And like I said before, I'm going to work with blue. Blue's already pretty dark, so I'm going to start with just my blue here for my darks, and then I'm going to add a little white to my blue to make a pale blue where it goes over the other ribbon. For some of you, it really depends on the color that you're using. Let's say you're using yellow. Yellow's already really light. So what you might want to do is maybe in your light area, you are going to just use yellow, and then as you go to the dark ends, you could add a little bit of red to make it darker. You could add a little bit of green to make it darker. You could add a little bit of black to make it darker. As long as whatever you're doing goes dark, light, dark, and you want to use the same colors in each segment. You don't want to keep switching it up, because then it's just going to look like a jumbled mess. So with mine, I'm going to use blue. So I'm going to start here, and you have to do this while it's wet. Blending. You can't let it dry at all. So this time I'm going to be very careful here. This time it does matter. I'm trying to get those straight lines. I need to get in these corners very carefully. If you need to use a tinier brush to do that, please do it. All right, so I've got my dark color. Now about right here, I'm going to start mixing up a lighter blue. See, that's a lot lighter. So while I have it wet, what I'm going to do, I have my light blue down. They're not blended at all. I'm going to clean my brush off on a paper towel. so that I don't have a lot of paint on it. And I'm just gonna go back and forth with the paintbrush with no paint right over where those two meet. And it should blend pretty nicely. But make sure you're doing this while it's wet. Now I'm gonna get a little bit lighter here. Okay, I'm gonna clean my paintbrush off. Okay, while it's still wet now, I don't have any paint on it. I mean, I got most of it off with the paper towel. It's not completely clean, but I'm gonna use this to go back and forth where those two colors meet, to just kind of blend them a little bit. Now I need to start going back the other way. So now I'm gonna get a little bit darker here. Being really careful on these edges to try to stay in the lines. I'm gonna clean my brush off. Just kind of wiping it back and forth. I'm not putting it in the water. And then I'm gonna go back and forth right over where those two colors meet to kind of blend them just a little bit. Oh, I did it a little too much right there, so I'm gonna go back with a little bit lighter, just to kind of go right over that spot. Right, now I'm gonna go back with just my blue and fill in the rest of this segment so that you can see how it goes dark, light, dark. And you need to do that with each one. And then it'll have the illusion of them going up and under all of them. Here, even with this little one, and this one, okay, I'll do one more. This one is a little tricky because it's so tiny, and I have this area where all three of them come together. So what I would do is start over here, dark. Then I'm gonna get a little bit lighter right here. Clean my brush off. While it's wet, go over where those two meet to blend them together a little bit. Get a little bit lighter right here. Clean my brush off. Blend a little bit. And then here, I'm gonna start getting a little bit darker. Maybe I don't get to make it all the way over to this dark blue, but it does need to get darker over here, because what's gonna happen as you do this and they start overlapping is you're gonna need to see contrast in between your ribbons. See how here it's dark and here it's light? That contrast is what's going to make things look like they're popping out and more 3D. So do that to each segment. All right, so there you go. When you're all done, you should have a few things. Background that contrasts with your ribbon. You should have a background that is textured and kind of loose with a variety of, or at least a little subtle change in color. And then with the ribbon, it needs to be very neat and blended, that goes from dark, light, dark with each segment. When you're finished, take a picture of it, give your file a name, and upload it into our Google Classroom assignment.